Hey everybody, welcome back to another XiaLand reviews. I've only done a couple in the past month or so, but these have been so much fun. I'm really looking forward to reviewing more movies. I like to do new movies, but I also like to do older movies that I just had never seen. So these are my first time viewing reactions. You know, I've done a lot of classics like Pulp Fiction, A Clockwork Orange, stuff like that I just had never seen. Here's another one. 10 years later, I have finally watched Sicario. That was a movie that has been on my to watch list for 10 years. When that came out, I really wanted to watch it and then just never got around to it. And before you know it, it's been 10 years. So I finally watched Sicario tonight for the first time. And it is an incredibly well done and powerful movie. It did not disappoint. I knew it was going to be good based on the director, based on, a lot of the reviews and everything that came out, the way people talked about it. It was a very beautifully done movie. It really captures the hopelessness that I still believe, we're feeling and experiencing today, again, 10 years later, and I'm sure far before this, the movie came out. So it's one of those movies that it's beautifully done. The cinematography is amazing. The score is fantastic. The acting is really good. The characters are very compelling, especially because they are so different in their own ways, and they have very different motivations and very different ideas of how the world works. And that's how they are themselves moving through the world, which is, it's something that you see every day. And especially when you're online and you're on the internet, people tend to react to things based on the way they have experienced life. So that then in turn really kind of dictates the way they move through the world and the way they interact with other people. And this movie showed that so beautifully. So I think... So Josh Brolin plays Matt Graver, and he's a CIA agent, but I don't think you really know that at first. It's one of those movies that I think I'm going to need to watch it another 2 or 3 more times just to kind of make sure I'm picking up on a lot of the nuances. Because as you're watching things, there's a lot of little pieces that sort of fit together, and once you get to the end, the whole picture kind of becomes clear. So I have a feeling after watching it another couple of times, you'll pick up on more things. It's a depressing movie. Although it's really good, it is a depressing movie. So Josh Brolin is a CIA agent, right? And he basically is doing this kind of off-book mission, and he recruits Emily Blunt, Kate Macer. I feel like I'm not saying their names correctly at all, but she comes over she's like part of a task force that goes after or tries to find kidnapping victims, and ends up in this really seedy sort of drug world of the cartels in Mexico. And they're in Arizona. They're kind of like right along the border. They are not telling her anything, and it becomes very clear that they don't want her to know too much, but you don't really know why. And so as you move through the movie, you kind of find things out as she puts pieces together. And I think that's a really cool way of doing it, especially because there's no like nudge, wink, wink to the audience, because she sort of is the audience and you're watching it along with her. And so I think what I really enjoy about that is you're kind of always guessing. And it shouldn't be that much of a surprise because, as we found out, the CIA just does this. They have been selling drugs to fund that organization for who knows how long, right? There's so much that goes on that we don't know about, but we're starting to find out more and more. And I think that's something that's been talked about in the past. And this is a movie basically just showing that. You get to the end of the movie, and I'm not going to, summarize the entire movie, because if you're watching this, you most likely have seen it. If you haven't, I highly recommend going to watch it. But you get to the end of it and you find out that they're not trying. There's no real justice here. There is and there isn't. See, that's the funny thing. It just depends how you look at it. There's a lot of moral ambiguity in this, right? And it depends how you feel about certain things. Different characters feel different ways. Like Josh Brolin, Matt Graver, he's very kind of opportunistic. So he just knows that this is the ends justify the means. This is what I have to do to get the job done. That's one less bad person on the street. We don't give a shit. And we get control. This makes us a lot more controllable. essentially what they were trying to do is get rid of the head of the cartel, Fausto Alarcon. I feel like I'm just butchering all of these pronunciations, but is basically to kill him and replace. They're not getting rid of the cartel. They're not dismantling anything. All they're doing is shifting power and putting someone in there that they then can control. So they essentially have control over the cartel. They're getting rid of this one guy because he's too violent. It's too much. Then they have Benicio del Toro's character, who's Alejandro, and he was a prosecutor in Mexico, and the cartel, with Fausto at the head, is responsible for killing his family in a really horrific way, right? His wife is beheaded, his daughter is thrown into a vat of acid. Like, it's enough to turn anyone into, I don't know if psychopath is the right word, but he's just a one-track mind, and all he cares about is vengeance. So it doesn't matter how he gets there. He just wants to be the one to deliver a swift, he does deliver a very swift death. I don't know if that's what he had planned, to not only Fausto, but his entire family. So without blinking, without feeling anything about it, he does to Fausto what was done to him. He kills his 2 sons and his wife right in front of him. And it was interesting at the end, you see Fausto kind of trying to talk to him in this way, where I don't know if he's trying to talk himself out of it. I don't think he realized the extent of the pain that Alejandro was in. You can't talk your way out of something like that. You beheaded this man's wife and killed his daughter, and are trying to say that it wasn't personal, and you were surprised when that doesn't move him in any sort of way. It doesn't give him any sort of pause. When his wife and his 2 children are killed in front of him, it's like it all becomes real to him. And it was interesting because Alejandro didn't want to, or maybe he did, but it didn't seem like it. He didn't want to inflict pain. He just wanted to end them. It wasn't like he was torturing this man. He just needed him to know his last moments of life is your entire family is gone. And it's this weird thing, right, where it's just this cyclical violence, where violence begets violence begets violence, and there's never any sort of, like, that cycle can just continue and continue and continue. And that's how countries stay at war for hundreds of years, however many years, however long it goes on. That's why there's like these blood rivalries that have gone on for generations, because it just continues. No one makes the first move to stop. And I'm not saying that Alejandro wasn't, I understand why he did what he did. I understand his motivations. I understand why he would want to do that. For him, justice and revenge are one and the same, right? So he got what he wanted. Dave Jennings is played by Victor Garber, and he is Emily Blunt's boss. And he has a really interesting line in the movie too, basically saying, you know, she wants to build this case against Fausto. She thinks they're going to be delivering real justice. At this point, she doesn't know what's actually happening. She has no idea what she's actually getting into, that this is essentially just they're going to go in and murder this entire family, this head of the cartel, and replace him with someone else. She thinks they're trying to get a dangerous man off the street. They're trying to build a case against him, let the justice system run. Unfortunately, it doesn't always. And in this, you know, in the instance that it does, it doesn't really, you know, there are a lot of parallels between this movie and the show The Wire. If you've seen The Wire, it is a phenomenal show. I cannot recommend it enough, but I have noticed there are a lot of parallels, especially as you get to the end of The Wire. You spend all of these seasons with all of these different characters, getting to know them and their place in the world, in that world, you know, whether they're just down on their luck kids, whether they're drug dealers, whether they're higher up, whether, you know, they're mules, runners, whatever it is. And you get to the end and, you know, Barkley gets put in jail for probably the rest of his life or however long. I'm forgetting names because I haven't watched it in a little while, but Idris Elba's character is killed. And you get a lot of characters are killed in the movie. Omar, I'm in the movie, in the show. It's still so sad to me. That was such a, anyway, the point is you get to the end of it and you realize it doesn't matter. because once those characters are gone, they've already been replaced by someone else. And this movie is very similar. So he had this really interesting line of, this year we have prosecuted and put away more people than in any other years. Are you noticing a difference out there? Is it making a difference? And the answer for her and for her partner, who's played by Daniel Kaluuya, I feel like I'm saying that also completely wrong. The character's name is Reggie Wayne. They both admit, no, it hasn't changed anything. And the unfortunate truth is that it won't. However, going in and killing them also won't. They will just be replaced by someone else. So it's just like whack-a-mole. You're playing this never-ending battle to keep it at bay. And, this is a theme that comes up. It's, it's not a unique theme. It comes up in fantasy books. And I mean, it's kind of similar to Harry Potter, to that world. Just the parallel there is essentially, you can never defeat evil. You can never defeat this type of stuff. You just keep it at bay. You just keep fighting. You just keep fighting and you just keep it at bay. But it really opens your eyes. I mean, I've never been to Mexico. You hear about Juarez. So I can't say whether or not this is an accurate portrayal, but I believe that it is. It's a whole other world there. And you hear about how a lot of the cops down in Mexico are owned by the cartel. And if they're not, they aren't alive for very long. So essentially, they're doing it a lot of times to provide for their families and to make sure that they don't die. It's just kind of, is the reality of life in certain places. And they showcase that sort of human aspect of it as well with the, Silvio. Silvio is this police officer down there, and he's got a wife and he's got a kid, and Alejandro kills him. Alejandro is a brutal mercenary. He goes in and he's just shooting everyone, and you get to the end and it's just the kid and his mom knows what's happening. And it's almost like, I think what was so powerful about that ending and that scene in particular is how there isn't even this typical mourning that you would see for a kid who lost his dad, or a woman, or a wife who lost her husband. There was no tears, there was no crying. It was almost like this resignation that they had of just, yeah, that happens. We just have to carry on with our life. So now she goes with her son to play soccer, and they hear the gunshots off in the distance, and they're like, yep, that's just what life is here. It's like they've always knew that at one point he could die. They always knew that at one point that was coming. It was going to happen. So when it did, they were just, yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And that was sort of the human aspect of it, because the rest of it felt very, I don't know, methodical is not the right word. It felt kind of almost clinical in a way, because it's set within these government agencies of people who are all just kind of doing what they need to do to get the job done. And Emily Blunt's character, Kate, also adds a bit of a human element in there as well. And what she realizes by the end, and this was like such a heartbreaking progression for her, is she's trying to get in there and make a difference. And she's a very idealistic agent. She thinks that the law is going to do its justice and put the bad guys away, and she realizes that that's not the case at all, and there is absolutely nothing she can do about it. She is completely powerless in this situation. She's completely powerless. And it's interesting too, because the character Alejandro, you get a feeling that, I mean, you kind of know that he's talking about his daughter when he says, you remind me of someone that I cared a lot about. And it almost seems he's got a couple of these like kind of touching moments with her. He puts his hand on her shoulder, makes sure she's okay. She gets into a thing with this guy, Ted, who is this crooked cop there, who's obviously a mule for the cartel as well. And that's in Arizona. And, she almost is choked to death by this guy, because she sees, there's a lot of these little things that kind of connect. And he has a band of money that has been essentially being laundered into an account for, Fausto, who has $17 million. They've every day for years been putting $9,000 a day into the account, which apparently you can do that without tipping off the IRS or something, stuff that I clearly don't know about. But So that was, a crazy scene for her. And it's Alejandro that comes to her rescue and comes in there and essentially saves her. And she thinks, well, you guys use me for bait. But the reality is they told her not to go into the bank, and she was on the CCTV, so they knew who she was, which was really, really stupid on her part. That being said, he saved her. And I think it's not that he almost felt something for her, but there was this connection there because she reminded him of her daughter or of his daughter rather. And there was sort of these human moments between them. But boy, does that go right out the window when he comes in and forces her to sign, essentially. So they have her there. You come to find out at the end that they have her there to cover their butts legally. The truth is they have her there because what they're doing is a very legal gray area, and they only wanted her, not the partner, because the partner was a lawyer, and he would have picked up on that probably a lot sooner than, or not a lawyer, but he has a law degree, picked up on that a lot sooner than she did. They just needed her there because they couldn't do anything domestically without like a domestic. It's kind of like, so this is kind of a little bit of an offshoot. I was rated by the DEA when I had just turned 18. They weren't rating me really, but it was my father. And we got rated by the DEA legally. In order for them to do that, they had to have the local police in Hawaii come with them. So they were there on that raid. So I realized it's a similar sort of thing. The CIA can't do anything there unless they have a domestic. They needed the FBI or whatever agency she was involved in to be there so that they could do that. And they needed her to say that everything was above board. And so he essentially threatened her, had a gun to her chin and said, it'll be like you committed suicide, Kate, to make her sign it. And she really did not want to sign it. It's just, it is a really heartbreaking movie, but it really shows you the reality of what things are actually like. You think that it's all about, oh, we're going to go get the bad guys, but that just isn't really realistic in any way. Sometimes things are clear cut and it's like, oh, that's the bad guy. We get him. He goes to jail. Oftentimes it's not that. And oftentimes that's not enough and it doesn't matter. And they said a stat, and I don't know if this stat is true, but is it 20% of people do drugs? And basically they just wanted to control that. They were like, if the 20% of the people that would stop doing drugs and wanting to, I don't know if wanting is the word, if it's a disease and it's a addiction, but regardless, if they stopped doing that, then yeah, this wouldn't be here, but that's not going to happen. So we need to control it. It's a more realistic approach, but it's sad. But it's sad. So this was a really good movie. It was a really powerful, really good movie. I loved all of it. I loved the cinema. There were some moments too where they're going through the tunnel and they're doing it going back and forth between night vision and I forget the other vision that they were filming in, but it just gave it such a cold sort of aspect, and it took a lot of the humanness of it away. But it was really good. It was really good. And it shows how much, Kate is out of her depth a lot in that as well. It's just, this is very shocking to her, even though in the first scene, and they start this movie off with a banger. You get right into it. They let you know immediately this is going to be a gruesome movie. And they show you that by, she goes to this house and she gets shot at, almost gets her head blown off. She shoots this guy dead, and they find so many bodies in the wall in this house. And that's something that's never explained, who those bodies are and what the hell they're doing there. I'm actually kind of curious about that. But anyway, it had to do with the cartel, and that's why she wanted to find them to stop the people, bring justice to the people that did that. But justice didn't look the way that she thought it did. And that was very shocking to her. But yeah, just really overall fantastic movie. Very, very powerful. Very, very depressing, just in the sense that you look at that and you're like, yeah, no, that's real, that's realistic, that's what happens, it's unfortunate, it's one of those things that you're just gonna have to keep fighting tooth and nail against, and it's never gonna actually go away. And then you also find out that the CIA just sells drugs to fund their organization, and that's like, tinfoil hat conspiracy, but it's still real. So anyway, wild movie, great movie. I heard there was a second one, but it was by someone else. that did the movie, and it's not as good. I might watch it just out of curiosity, but I hear it's not as good as the first one. So I think for me, just the first one. 1,000% worth it. If this is something that you haven't seen yet, go watch it because it is great. And if you have seen it, maybe rewatch it because it's worth a rewatch. I think I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again another time and just see it with fresh eyes, knowing what's happening, and you can pick up on more things that happen. But anyway, that is my review of Sicario, 10 years late. I will be continuing to do more of these, a mix of older movies and newer movies. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if this is content that you like. I also do stream live on the channel 3 nights a week at 9 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. Those are really, really fun streams. So if you ever want to join for one of those, it is a good time. And there'll be some more stuff like this coming out. Until next time, I'll see you later.